Okay, so I went on vacation and stopped by Savannah, Georgia. I'd never been there. And I got there on a Saturday afternoon. Immediately hopped on one of those tour trolleys and proceeded to go all over town. They had a map and a series of stops. And the stops would be one on one side of town, the next on the other side of town, the third somewhere off in Timbuktu somewhere, and then the next one would be back almost where it started, and then it go off in another direction. And it was very, very difficult to follow. It was not, in my mind, geographically rational at all. I mean, basically I would do something similar to this tour that I have mapped out, which I followed the following day on a Sunday morning about 8 o'clock local time. And what I was really trying to do here was locate a fountain that I had seen on the trolley tour. Because the trolley thing was so hard to follow, I did not know whether this fountain was in a square or not. I thought that it was. So I got on these streets and I just went by each one of these squares and hoped to find a fountain sitting in the middle of one of them. And I did not. It turned out that the fountain that I was looking for was actually in Forsyth Park. And I found that out after describing the situation, what I was looking for, to a policeman I encountered here at this particular square. And so I found my fountain, I got my photos and everything, and in the process of doing that, I hit 19 out of the 22 squares in Savannah. And included in the 19 was, after finishing up taking my pictures and my photographs and everything, I proceeded northward this way through 5 squares, and ended up here on the riverfront. And that was an interesting journey also. So basically what I did was I went back and forth as indicated with the red arrows, checking out each one of the squares. And while that was happening, I had my dash cam going. And the nice thing about a dash cam is that you can drive down a street and pay no attention whatever to all the wonderful sights on that street and just drive, and then come back and review your dash cam later and see all the stuff that you might have gawked at had you not had a dash cam. And you don't run over anybody, you don't have any accidents. It's, I think, a really nice way to tour an area like this historic district of Savannah. So we'll go ahead and start our dash cam video right here at where it says start of tour, and then we'll proceed down this street, which is Congress, and then we'll come back this way, and then we'll start back this other way, which is actually a street with no squares, and that street is Oglethorpe. But it's a really pretty street. It's got all these overhanging oaks with their Spanish moss and all that sort of stuff, and the light coming, the sunlight coming through the trees casts very nice shadows. It was all really, really pretty. and the whole trip is like that, and I didn't see much of any of it until I reviewed my dash cam. So I think we'll just go ahead and get started, and I hope you guys enjoy it as much as I did. There's some interesting things that went on, and we'll point those out as we go along. So we're starting off here at Martin Luther King and West Bay, and we'll immediately turn right on Montgomery. And it's only a block or two to the first square. We'll go around it to the right and head east. I'll try to point out some of the landmarks as we go through this. So right now we're looking at a lot of pretty old buildings, and on this particular street they're not necessarily great at this, and not on these particular blocks. It's an old commercial area. This church is really gorgeous. And no, we will not kill the guy on the bicycle. The thing on the right is a parking garage. On the corner here on the right is a old style movie theater. Now we get into some pretty architecture. And we're still on Congress Avenue, our street. This house on the right, I think, shows up in a number of tourist advertising. I mean, there's a lot of pretty stuff here. So this is Broad Street, and it runs pretty much, it is the southwestern limit of the old district, the historic district. And it looks like we're going really fast here, but we're not. Wide-angle lens cameras, things look farther away than they actually are, and they look like they're going by you much faster than they actually are. The house on the left doesn't look so good. The one on the right isn't all that great either. But we'll soon be by all that. I think the thing on the right is another parking garage. It wasn't pretty, so I skipped some of it. There's a museum on the left. It looked really interesting. I didn't go in. So I skipped all the streets required to get around. There was, basically the street I was on dead-ended into another street, and then I had to go right, and then I had to go left, and then I had to come back left a second time, and then turn left onto this street. So I skipped all that. Now this is Oglethorpe Street, and looks like I typoed it here. There's a lot of it looks really nice when you're driving on it, especially with the sun coming through it as it is, and all the shade and all the Spanish moss, and in various areas it has some really nice architecture. That thing on the right is a public school system. There's some more residential housing. That guy in that Buick is even more oblivious to where he is than I am. Very pretty drive. And there are no squares on Oglethorpe. I didn't know that when I turned on the Oglethorpe, but it doesn't have any squares on it. So basically this is a scenic drive getting us nowhere. So here we are at Broad Street again. So I had to do some thinking before I turned right on McDonough here. Beginning to wonder, am I doing this right? The Crawford Square doesn't have a whole lot in it. It's not one of the more prominent squares, I guess. And now I'm really beginning to wonder what's going on, because it looks like it's going to dead end up here, and I'm not real sure at the time that I'm doing this how I'm going to get back into the squares where I'm hoping to find this fountain. We're coming up to Liberty Street here. And we're going to turn right. And here are some girls on horses just riding down the street. And now they're going to catch up. So this is Liberty Street, and it does not have any squares either. It has a lot of shady trees with Spanish moss, and it's fairly pretty. I look at that one on the right there. But it's not getting me where I want to go. Look at all that Spanish moss. There's another square down there a couple of blocks. And I'm wondering, is this the way I should be doing this? Am I ever going to find this fountain? So I come around the other side of this square, this Orleans Square, and check the map and decide what I want to do, and then I decide to head south. Lots of pretty houses. That house is pretty. And all those houses are pretty. Man, it sure does look nice. I'm sure all these places are really, really expensive. I mean, if you want to live someplace pretty, this is the place to be. Alright, so at Chatham Square, I decided to go straight after turning right and turning back around. And we're getting close to where we pick up the policeman. We don't pick him up, where we encounter the policeman. We have one more square to go. And that's actually a Jewish synagogue there on the left. And it backs right up to well, it doesn't quite back up to another church. So here's another church. And here we see the policeman.
They're not a square with a fairly big fountain. Okay. Thank you very much.
So it's only about 2 blocks away. It's not in a square. It's in Forsyth Park. So off we go. Lots of gorgeous stuff in between. So we'll turn right here and get on to the east side of Forsyth Park. And all this is just as gorgeous as it can possibly be. So we'll turn left on the Gaston and we'll find ourselves a parking spot, and that house on the left is just fabulous. And I think it's privately owned. A lot of these places are museums or foundation headquarters or something. You know, there's some sort of not residential structures, although they look like it. And there are those horses. Because I was backing up, I didn't actually see them at that time. They just sort of showed up. And when I stopped the car here and started to take some pictures, I turn around backwards and look back at this house on the corner. And then from there, I'm looking up Gaston and see some nice things to photograph. And then I turn into the park and there's those girls, and there's the fountain I've been looking for. What I'm trying to do is get the sunlight reflecting through the water and some detail. So this girl on the left is the one who is going to go off and ride her horse to Los Angeles. At least that was the plan at the time that I was there. So I wish her luck on doing that. You can pause it here and read that if you want. Tells you when the fountain was put in, tells you, when the park was set up. It's trying to be humorous there about Shoreman. So anyway, I'm walking around in the park taking photos, and somebody points out that there's these people on horses riding back and forth. And it turns out that this girl's boyfriend is there at one end of this long field. It's got to be 200 yards long. And he's sitting there with a video camera making videos. So while they're rushing back and forth for him, I thought I'd take a few pics myself. After finishing up with the park, I started walking up the street toward the next square and began taking photographs of what was there. This is the next square. And the things around it, and then I walked back to the car. And drove up 4 blocks or so to, I think, Madison Square. We'll find out in a minute. Right, right, we're heading up to Madison Square. So this is Monterey Square. I got lots of photos around that. Is this stuff not pretty or what? Look at this house. Where on earth did somebody come up with that? It's gorgeous. I love it. And that was around Monterey Square. So the square that's coming up is Madison. And there's this tall building on the left that's just really something to look at. And the one on the right almost looks like a fortress of some kind. It's all brick and heavy looking. And it turns out that's part of an art school. I'm sure it didn't start that way. But this is looking at Madison Square. And this is a monument in the middle of Madison Square. Just amazing how much stuff they crammed into a small space. Alright, so now we're leaving Madison Square, and what we're going to do is just head straight north to the riverfront, and we'll take some photos there too. See, the nice thing about a dash cam is You can record all the stuff you see and not have to be distracted by it while you're driving. That way you don't run over people gawking at the scenery. Something everybody should consider. So we actually went by here previously, I think. I think it's that same movie theater we saw earlier. This building here is gorgeous. And it looks like it's part of the Presbyterian church that's on the left. All of these squares coming up from Forsyth Park toward the river are really quite nice. They have monuments and they have trees and they have flowers and they have all kinds of stuff. And they just look really good. So now we're in the commercial district and we're gonna come up on another square. And we were on this street before. And there's that Episcopal church. I guess they're having service. This building on the right is supposedly part of Bank of America. They didn't build that, I'm sure. Now there's more commercial street and commercial stuff, and then we go up to the city hall and we'll turn left. Even the commercial areas look good. Alright, so this is a fun access in down to the riverfront. They have these little narrow ancient ramps paved with ballast stone, not cobblestone. Cobblestone is actually cut to be used for paving, and ballast stone is just rock. And sailing ships would try to balance themselves forward and back, side to side, by putting rocks in the bottom of the ship to try and get it all straightened out. And then when they arrive and pick up cargo, they don't need the stone anymore, so they toss it aside, and the city used it for paving streets. So on Sunday mornings, it looks like Savannah doesn't require parking, doesn't require that you pay for parking. I may be wrong about that, but I didn't get any parking tickets. So I looked up the river to the left, and I saw that big boat up there, and then I looked to the right, and I saw one actually coming this way. And this sucker is huge. This is a little model of the original Savannah steamship. And what I want you to notice here is there's a red line from that tugboat going up to this monster container ship, and the tugboat has its engines in reverse. So it's actually trying to slow down that container ship. Amazing. So I'm done with the waterfront. I'll get out of Savannah and I'll head for St. Augustine in Florida. And that pretty much is the end of the trip. Not entirely the end, because they can run into another interesting thing. This road is really rough. So this building here looks like it came out of Holland. And then up ahead we have these pedestrian walkways, which are more picturesque than the ones we have in St. Louis. And this street is really rough. There's one of those tour trolleys. You know, in Savannah streets, it can be a bumpy ride. And that's all. Thanks for watching, and I hope you enjoyed it.